Greetings from our channel again. Shocking information. The bodies of Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were discovered in their Santa Fe, New Mexico, residence. A man who was once a Hollywood star but decided to completely step away from the limelight has a surprising conclusion. No indications of foul play were found, according to the police. But what actually transpired is still a mystery. In addition to becoming a two-time Academy Award winner, Gene Hackman had a history filled with unspoken hardships. He was notoriously combative and never shied away from using his fists to resolve disputes. He was previously imprisoned for stealing and was regarded as someone who had little chance of succeeding. Instead of leaving Hollywood because his fame had diminished, he left for something much more significant. Is this really the last chapter in Gene Hackman's life, or is there still more to unravel? Let's investigate. Gene Hackman was not only placing a wager on his career when he made the decision to follow his passion of becoming an actor. Unaware that he was making mistakes that were all but certain, he was giving up the most significant aspects of his life. Hackman once thought Faye Maltese would be his rock, and they were married in 1956. While he battled to establish himself in the movie business. Hackman was still an unknown actor at the time, working odd jobs to make ends meet. They led a modest but contented existence in the early years of their marriage. Others insisted that her husband would never succeed, but Faye had faith in him. They had 3 children together: Christopher Allen, Elizabeth Jean, and Leslie Ann. They also constructed a house. In Hollywood, where fate frequently rules, love and success are rarely correlated. With Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, Hackman's career took off in the late 1960s. By the 1970s, he was formally one of the greatest stars in the industry thanks to successful movies like The French Connection, 1971, and The Poseidon Adventure, 1972. However, Hackman's family life was threatened by darkness as Hollywood's attention focused more on him. Hackman was so engrossed in his work that he traveled from city to city and from picture to film. In his life, Faye and the kids grew apart over time. His attendance at family dinners became a rare luxury, and the calls home grew increasingly infrequent. You become quite self-centered as an actor, according to an interview with the New York Times from 1989. You yearn for recognition all your life. And it's difficult to say no when success arrives. For a poor child like me, the money, the celebrity, and the temptations were all too much. Despite Faye Maltese's patience, the gap between them had eventually become too great to close. Following 30 years of marriage, they formally separated in 1986. Quietly, Hackman's first marriage dissolved. No altercations, no court cases. Just the remorse of a man who discovered his loss too late. When asked for advice for his son in an interview with GQ, Hackman apologetically acknowledged, "I was away for too long. I have nothing to advise you on." Was this the outcome of bad decisions or the unavoidable result of constant pressure to succeed? He discovered the hard way that success came at an intolerable cost when family happiness was sacrificed. Hackman continued his career after divorcing Faye Maltese in 1986, landing big jobs and continuing to be one of Hollywood's best performers, although he was no longer supported by his family. Hackman lived alone for years until he met Betsy Arakawa, a pianist who had no connections to Hollywood and was 32 years younger than Hackman. Betsy would revolutionize Hackman's life. Betsy worked at a gym where they first met in the late 1980s. There was no haste, no spectacle. Their bond grew organically. Hackman experienced tranquility for the first time because to Betsy. Hackman and Betsy were married in 1991. He didn't want his career to take precedence over his personal life this time. They made the decision to live a tranquil life away from the media and Hollywood. Gene Hackman would prefer to forget the memories of the several life-altering disasters that fate had destined him to experience before he found serenity. His mother's untimely death in 1962 was one of the first shocks of his life. In a home fire, Anna Lyda Elizabeth Hackman died. She reportedly drank excessively, fell asleep with a cigarette lighted, and the house was swiftly destroyed by the fire. It was an indescribable regret for Hackman, not just the loss of a loved one. The only person who genuinely thought he could pursue a career in acting had been his mother. She wasn't there to see it, though, by the time Hackman had started to establish himself on film. Though he rarely discussed this sorrow in public, he said in a rare interview that "I Never Sing for My Father" was the movie he would like to show his mother because it reflected his own life narrative. However, the suffering didn't end there. The sudden death of Hackman's best friend, Norman Gary, in 1982 dealt him yet another heartbreaking loss. One of Hackman's closest confidants was Gary, a famous Hollywood lawyer. Hackman had more concerns than answers after his unexpected death fueled rumors of unsolved financial issues. Hackman immersed himself in acting as a means of numbing the pain and burying himself in his art, taking on role after role. He later said in an interview that he had put all of his effort into acting just to avoid drowning in grief. He landed some of the most iconic roles of his career during that time, such as Under 1988, which cemented his status as one of Hollywood's top stars. However, Hackman experienced more than just emotional losses. He actually faced danger on several occasions in real life. He got into a street fight in Hollywood in 2001, which is one of the most memorable events. Hackman struck another vehicle by mistake while driving. Two young men, clearly enraged, came out. Unaware that they were upsetting a former Marine, they insulted Hackman rather than handling the matter coolly. Hackman was 71 and not to be intimidated. He delivered the opening blow with little verbal contact. There was mayhem in the center of the road as the three of them surged at one another. Although no one was taken into custody, police swiftly came to break up the altercation. The episode demonstrated once more that Hackman had never lost his fighting spirit, even after he left behind his action-packed performances. The closest encounter with mortality, nevertheless, may have occurred in 2012. Hackman was riding a bike without a helmet on a Florida road when he was abruptly hit by a truck. As word of the tragedy circulated, people began to worry that he might have suffered major injuries or worse. However, Hackman managed to survive. His injuries were minor, and he was released from the hospital that same day. According to those close to him, he continued to ride a bicycle despite his advanced age. However, he never left the house without a helmet after that day. Go back to 2004. Gene Hackman abruptly left Hollywood after finishing the comedy Welcome to Mooseport. Unlike other legends, there was no formal announcement, no goodbye news conference, and no spectacular send-off movie. He just disappeared from the screen. Although many people thought Hackman was simply taking a vacation at the time, it turned out to be his final commercial appearance. Questions started to come up. Why would an actor who was still at the top of his game and could still control the screen abruptly stop showing up? Was it because, despite having a $30 million budget, Welcome to Mooseport only made $14 million at the box office? Was it that he no longer thought scripts were interesting enough? Or was he just worn out by Hollywood's glamour and mayhem? The true cause was far more intricate. As a matter of fact, Hackman had started to notice that his health had declined. He had been sent to the hospital in 1990 because of a serious blockage in his arteries. When the doctors realized that his cardiac condition was serious, they performed an angioplasty right away in order to save his life. He might not have lived if he had reached the hospital a few hours later. Hackman had to alter his way of living after the surgery, but he carried on performing for more than 10 years. By the early 2000s, he was experiencing health problems again. During filming, he began to feel worn out. The strain of dramatic situations, the long work hours, and the frequent travel all got to be too much. Hackman acknowledged in an interview with Empire magazine that he had run out of energy to keep performing. He also disclosed that his physicians had counseled him to stay away from needless stress, such as the rigors of a movie career. Additionally, Hackman would prefer not to do anything at all if he couldn't give it his all. But there were other factors besides health. The clamor and spectacle of Hollywood had never appealed to Hackman. He had always expressed openly his distaste for the way the business was run. He didn't want to live under continual public scrutiny, he didn't like having to pretend to be kind in interviews, and he didn't like award ceremonies. He once remarked, "I trained to be an actor, not to be a star." After over 40 years in the business, he believed he had given enough to the unrelenting machine that was Hollywood. He decided to leave it all behind. No blitz, no farewells. He stopped walking the red carpet and stayed away from any movie-related events. And declined every offer of acting that was made to him. In the hopes of a resurgence, directors kept approaching Hackman, but he turned them all down. In 2008, after a rare public appearance, he said simply when asked if he would ever do acting again, "No." If a really good script ever came along, he quipped, he may give it a shot, but only if it were shot in his home so he wouldn't have to leave. In order to balance his life outside of his renowned film profession, Gene Hackman always pursued personal interests. He stopped attending extravagant parties and entertainment events after leaving Hollywood. Rather, he concentrated on peaceful personal pastimes like painting and writing. Writing became Gene Hackman's passion, which he followed with the same fervor that he had previously shown for acting. He wrote 5 books, most of them were crime thrillers and historical fiction. includes Pursuit, 2013, and Justice for None, 2004. In addition to preserving his creativity, writing provided him with a means of avoiding publicity. Despite his acting retirement, Hackman continued to make contributions in various capacities. He voiced 2 documentaries about the U.S. Marine Corps, the military branch he had previously served in 2016 and 2017. This was more than simply a profession to him, it was a chance to honor his history. Hackman maintained ties to the important periods of his life even after he left Hollywood. Hackman also made time for painting, a pastime he had never displayed in public. He never displayed or sold his paintings, he painted just for himself. "I don't want my paintings to be seen by anybody," he once remarked, "it's private." He used painting as a means of achieving peace. Very different from the frantic beat of Hollywood. Few people were aware that Hackman, who was well known for playing tough guys on TV, was also a professional racing car driver. In the late 1970s, he participated in races run by the Sports Car Club of America and even took home the Long Beach Grand Prix celebrity race victory. His most thrilling experience was driving a Toyota for Dan Gurney's legendary racing team in the renowned 24 Hours of Daytona in 1983. Hackman's participation in a 6-hour endurance race at the Sears Point Raceway in California stands out as one particularly memorable occasion. One of the most cutting-edge race vehicles of its era, the Audi Quattro, was the vehicle he drove. But calamity struck as his car flipped due to his brakes locking up, forcing him to leave the race. He then quipped that maybe he should have allowed a stunt double take his place, even if he wasn't hurt. However, one cannot pursue speed indefinitely. Hackman became aware that his reflexes were becoming slower as he grew older. He acknowledged that you must have fast reflexes and that you must stop when they begin to wane. He made the decision to completely give up racing due to health concerns, concentrating instead on safer pastimes like cycling and painting. Hackman stopped looking for ostentatious sports cars after he left the fast-paced world of racing. Rather, he adopted more useful automobiles. He frequently drove a Toyota Tundra, a strong yet little pickup vehicle that suited his practical way of living, around Santa Fe. Hackman kept up his long-distance cycling habit, which kept him in shape despite his advanced age. He continued to utilize an electric bike to travel around even in his 90s, demonstrating that his spirit of energy had never diminished. Despite his departure from professional racing, Hackman's passion for cars remained unwavering. In the past, he raced competitively in a 1983 Toyota Celica GT. However, his collection of cars represented his shift to a more tranquil lifestyle. He no longer pursued ostentatious supercars, preferring robust, functional versions that retained their own personalities. One example of this is the Porsche Panamera, a high-end sedan with powerful performance that reflects his sophisticated taste. For individuals who value elegance without going overboard, the Mercedes E-Class is a cozy yet subtle option. His love for performance vehicles had not entirely faded, as seen by the Ford Mustang Shelby, a representation of unadulterated American might. His contemporary pick, the Tesla Model S, demonstrated his interest in technology and the development of electric cars. Hackman never lost his zest of adventure, even if his life had slowed down. He had only learned to accept it in a different way. In addition to his passion for automobiles, Hackman was an avid supporter of American football. He was frequently seen at the stadium as an honorary guest and had a great deal of respect for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He still found time for the things that made him happy, even if he was no longer on TV. Gene Hackman rarely appeared in public, but when he did, everyone took notice. The movie star was sometimes seen filling up his automobile at a gas station in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where he and his wife, Betsy Arakawa, had lived for years. Just Hackman, dressed casually, living their everyday lives without bodyguards or hordes of paparazzi. His third-generation Toyota, which was a sturdy, potent, and useful pickup truck rather than a showy supercar or a luxury car fit for a Hollywood celebrity, piqued people's interest even more. His Tundra could handle any terrain because to its 5.7-liter V8 engine that produced 375 horsepower and its TRD 4x4 off-road package. In addition, the truck had an R-Truck bed cover, Bilstein shock absorbers, and privacy glass. All created for a quiet, peaceful living. This decision said a lot about Hackman. He persisted with a simple, practical car, even though many rich actors owned Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, or Lamborghinis. It was a wonderful reflection of him. Sensible, modest, and unaffected by attention. Even in retirement, Hackman stayed loyal to himself and had never sought the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. A legend who made the decision to live a modest but unquestionably strong life. Not only was Gene Hackman a superb performer. Despite his paradoxes, he was a perceptive individual. He might be tough and not be scared to argue with directors or even fight in person. However, he may also disappear from Hollywood with no reason. He never pursued celebrity or made an effort to win over anyone but himself. A career rebel. A legend who went when he wanted to. That was his personality and mannerisms. Something that not everyone was able to accomplish. Gene Hackman was more than just a great actor. He was the epitome of fortitude and an uncompromising attitude. In spite of his early disdain and suspicion, he became one of Hollywood's greatest icons. Hackman demonstrated that luck isn't a factor in success. It all comes down to persistence and self-belief. While many Hollywood celebrities still strive for fame, Hackman made the decision to live a quiet, uncomplicated life in Santa Fe with his wife, away from the demands of public approval. His legacy is not limited to his well-known characters, such as Popeye Doyle or Lex Luthor, but also to the way he lived, never compromising with the boundaries that others attempted to place on him. Even though the world was stunned to learn of his and Betsy's deaths, Gene Hackman's legacy endures. His followers will always cherish his performances, his life story, and the guy who created the legend. How about you? How does Gene Hackman come to mind? Through his iconic performances, his memorable sayings, or just the way he lived his life according to his own rules? To join us in remembering a real Hollywood legend, please post a remark with the words "R.I.P. Gene Hackman" if you think highly of him. A man who won the affection and respect of the industry. Watch the video on your screen to learn more about Gene Hackman's life and career. To find out the whole story, watch it now. To ensure you never miss out on the unseen tales of the legends you like, remember to subscribe to our channel.